Welcome to today's Explainer. When we think of nations, we usually picture these massive, sprawling land masses, endless highways, and millions upon millions of citizens. But today we're looking at the world's smallest countries, based on 2024 data. We are talking about places with populations so incredibly tiny, they literally redefine what a country even is. Let's jump right in. Are you completely fed up with the hustle and bustle of the city? I mean, seriously, just think about your daily commute for a second. The crowded sidewalks, the endless, deafening noise of traffic, and that constant feeling of just being surrounded by crowds wherever you go. If you find yourself yearning for some actual peace and quiet, maybe dreaming of a place where you can actually hear yourself think, you are going to absolutely love the places we're unpacking today. We're exploring a completely different way of life, far, far removed from the overwhelming density of modern urban living. And to be clear, this isn't just about finding a quiet park. It's about exploring entire nations that offer a total escape from the crowd. For most of the global population, reality means packed, stressful, and overpopulated cities. We're just so accustomed to waiting in line, fighting for a parking spot, and living stacked on top of one another in giant high-rises. And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast, because on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, the world's tiniest nations offer the ultimate antidote to modern overcrowding. These places provide an experience defined by space, quiet, and incredibly tight-knit communities. When your entire country has fewer residents than a single neighborhood in London or Tokyo, the whole pace of life changes completely. Community means something entirely different when you essentially know everyone in town, and the whole concept of rush hour practically ceases to exist. Now, just to be super clear here, we aren't just talking about remote, unincorporated villages or some random unmapped island out in the middle of the ocean. No way. The places on our list today are recognized sovereign states. They are fully acknowledged by the United Nations on the global stage. They have their own governments, they mint their own coins, they issue their own passports, and they pass their own laws, the whole shebang. They just happen to have famously small populations. This actually gives them a legitimate equal seat at the global table right alongside massive superpowers. It's such a fascinating quirk of international relations that a nation with a fraction of the population of the US or China still holds recognized sovereign weight. The sheer scale, or, well, the lack of it, is just staggering. When looking at the 2024 data for the top 10 smallest countries, the absolute largest population on this micro list belongs to the island nation of Dominica, capping out at just over 73,000 people. Think about that for a second. You could fit the entire population of this sovereign country into a mid-sized college football stadium, and honestly, you would still have a few thousand empty seats left over. There are single suburbs in major metropolitan areas that hold vastly more people than the entirety of Dominica. It completely resets our baseline for what constitutes a functioning country when the entire national demographic can literally fit inside a single sporting arena. And wow, the numbers drop remarkably from there. At the very bottom of the list is Vatican City, a nation home to just over 500 people. 500! Imagine living in a recognized, sovereign country where you could realistically know the name of every single citizen. It's an astonishing demographic reality. You have an independent postal service, a radio station, and an independent administration, all functioning for a population smaller than your average high school graduating class. It is truly awe-inspiring when you try to wrap your head around the logistics of a nation where every individual resident mathematically makes up nearly 0.2% of the total population. Okay, let's dive into this. Where exactly are these places? Well, a clear pattern emerges in the data. Our first major grouping falls under the category of tiny island getaways. For a lot of these countries, their small population is directly tied to sheer geographical isolation. They are surrounded by vast expanses of ocean, which makes them beautifully secluded. Because they are so far removed from massive continental trade routes and urban sprawl, they naturally remain remarkably quiet. It preserves a way of life that is fundamentally linked to the sea and perfectly insulated from the chaotic growth you see on mainland continents. So we have this incredible sweep of breathtaking tropical escapes that are perfectly preserved by their low populations. Perfect options if you fancy a quiet holiday. We've got places like Dominica, famous for its incredible natural beauty, and St. Kitts and Nevis over in the Caribbean. But moving across the globe, things get really interesting. Take Tuvalu, for example. It is so remote and sparsely populated, but it actually found a brilliant way to sustain its economy in the digital age. It generates significant national income simply from leasing its .tv internet domain to media companies worldwide. How smart is that? Then there's Palau, an island nation that actually leverages its tiny population to passionately protect its incredibly unique marine ecosystems, creating these massive no-fishing zones that absolutely dwarf the island itself.
Because these island nations have so few residents, they largely avoid the heavy industrialization that ruins so many natural landscapes. They turn their small size into their absolute greatest asset for conservation.
But hey, you don't actually have to cross an ocean to find microscopic populations. Nestled right inside the borders of the European continent are the microstates. Unlike the isolated islands we just explored, these tiny countries are totally landlocked and often completely surrounded by much larger, densely populated neighbors like France and Italy. It's such a fascinating geographical contrast to find these tiny, quiet enclaves surviving and thriving right in the middle of one of the most bustling, historically turbulent, and interconnected continents on Earth. The absolute standout stars of that European group are Monaco, San Marino, and Vatican City. And what is so remarkable here is the outsized global footprint these places have managed to secure. San Marino, for instance, isn't just small, it proudly claims to be the oldest surviving sovereign state and constitutional republic in the world. It cleverly maintained its independence through centuries of European wars and shifting empires through very strategic treaties. Then you have Monaco. Despite being incredibly dense for its size, it leverages unique tax laws and legendary glamour to become a massive economic powerhouse fueled by luxury tourism. And of course, Vatican City, despite bottoming out our list at roughly 500 residents, commands immense geopolitical influence as the spiritual center for over 8 billion Catholics worldwide. These microstates prove definitively that a country's influence, wealth, and historical footprint on the world stage are for sure not limited by a tiny citizen count. So we've looked at the staggering numbers from Dominica's 73,000 right down to the 500 residents of Vatican City. We've explored remote tropical islands leveraging the digital economy and historic European enclaves that have outlasted ancient empires. But as the world grows increasingly crowded and global challenges like shifting sea levels threaten coastal regions, you have to wonder, how long can these micronations maintain their quiet isolation? Will these havens of peace remain untouched, or will they be forced to adapt to a rapidly changing planet? Based on the data we looked at today, which tiny nation is your ultimate uncrowded escape? It certainly makes you wonder what the map is going to look like a century from now. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.